A Soviet tanker fires his brand-new beast killer cannon at a Tiger. He expects a kill, but he stares in horror as the shell bounces right off. Why did the ultimate weapon fail? February 5th, 1944, outside the village of Shandarivka, Ukraine. The wind sweeping across the frozen steppe doesn't howl, it slices. Inside the turret of Stalin's fist, the air smells of diesel, sweat, and the sharp metallic tang of cold-greased steel. Junior Lieutenant Dmitri Volkov presses his forehead against the padded eyepiece of his TMFD-7 gun sight. The steel of the turret is so cold it burns bare skin on contact. His world is a narrow, grey-brown circle of shattered trees and frozen mud, part of the monstrous encirclement known as the Korsun-Cherkassy Pocket. Dmitri isn't a veteran of 41. He wasn't at Moscow or Stalingrad. He is the new generation, and he is sitting in the new solution. His tank, number 214, is a T-34, but not the T-34 that broke its teeth at Kursk. This is the T-3485. The wide, mud-churning tracks are the same. The revolutionary sloped armor is the same, but the turret is new. It's a vast, three-man casting, and sticking out of its mantlet is the entire reason for Dmitri's existence. The D5 tons 85mm high-velocity cannon. For months, they had been trained on it, drilled with it, and told it was the answer. The old crews, the haunted-eyed survivors from the Prokhorovka field slaughter, spoke of the Panzer Kampfwagen WWII, the Tiger. They told stories of their 76mm shells good, reliable shells that tore apart Panzer III's and foreshitting the Tiger's flat, arrogant face, and splashing. That was the word they all used. Splashing. Like a steel-cored raindrop. They described watching, in frozen horror, as their rounds shattered or ricocheted, leaving nothing but a black smear on the cream-coloured paint. And then, the inevitable, terrifying flash from the Tiger's own 88mm, and another T-34 would simply cease to exist. But this 85mm was different. It was an adaptation of a Zenitka, an anti-aircraft gun. It was designed to hurl a 9-kilogram, armor-piercing shell at nearly 800 meters per second. It was, as their political officer had declared, the Zveroboy, the beast killer. Nervous, Lieutenant? The voice of his commander, Sergeant Pavel, crackled over the intercom. Pavel was a veteran, a grizzled man from the 1st Tank Army who had seen it all. Just cold, Sergeant. Dmitri lied, his hands tight on the traverse wheels. Good. Cold keeps you awake. They were in an overwatch position, hull down behind the collapsed stone wall of a farm. Their V2 diesel engine rumbled at a low, vibrating idle, a 500-horsepower heart beating impatiently. Mikhail, the driver, sat statue still below them, his eyes fixed on the narrow slit of his periscope. Movement. Pavel's voice suddenly lost all its casualness. It became flat, hard. Tree line, 2 o'clock. Range, 1500. Dmitri's body moved without thought. His left hand spun the traverse wheel, the electric motor whining in protest as the heavy turret began to move. His right hand adjusted the elevation. The gun sight swam across the monochrome landscape and stopped. It emerged from the skeletal birch trees not with a burst of speed, but with an appalling, inevitable presence. It was enormous. Box flat, painted in a crude winter camouflage, its overlapping road wheels churning the frozen earth. It wasn't a Panzer IV. It wasn't a stooge. It was him. Tiger, Dmitri breathed, his throat dry. The beast was moving diagonally, showing its thick side. An easy shot, but too far. The 85mm was good, but 1,500 meters was a prayer. He doesn't see us, Pavel said, his voice a low hiss. Wait, Dmitri. Wait. Let him close the distance. Mikhail, engine ready. The Tiger didn't close. It stopped. It sat in the open field, a monument of 57 tons, as if daring them. And then, with horrifying leisure, its long 88mm gun began to turn. Not towards them. Not yet. It was scanning. He's hunting, Pavel muttered. He knows we're here. He just doesn't know where. The Tiger's turret stopped, and then began to traverse back, directly towards their position. "He sees us!" Mikhail, the driver, yelled. "Range! 1,000 meters!" Dmitri shouted, his eye jammed to the sight. The reticle was perfectly centered on the Tiger's front plate, the Hauptpanzer Platte, 100 millimeters of solid, face-hardened Krupp steel. "Fire!" Pavel roared. "Load BR 365. Fire! Dmitri, fire!" Dmitri was already there. His world had shrunk to the crosshairs and the flat, menacing rectangle that filled them. He had the Zveroboy. He was the new generation. He would not fail. He slammed his boot on the firing pedal. The boom was a physical punch, a concussion that filled the turret with smoke and the smell of burnt cordite. The tank rocked back on its suspension. The breech slammed open, ejecting the white-hot, smoking casing which clanged against the brass deflector. Vasily, the loader, was already grabbing the next round. But Dmitri was still on the sight. He saw the tracer, a red spark, sail across the 1,000-meter gap in less than 2 seconds. It flew true. It was a perfect shot. It struck the Tiger dead center. A brilliant, white-yellow flash erupted on the tank's face. "Hit! A hit!" Vasily screamed, ramming the new shell home. Dmitri stared, his blood turning to ice. The tracer hadn't penetrated. He had seen it. The shell, upon striking the armor, had bounced. It ricocheted, tumbling end over end, spiking straight up into the grey sky. A black scorch mark appeared on the Tiger's armor, but that was all. The monster hadn't even flinched. And now its 88mm gun, that long, slender tube of death, was perfectly, unhurriedly, aimed directly at them. There is no sound, only a flash. The German gunner, 1,000 meters away, has done his job with horrifying, mathematical precision. For the crew of Stalin's fist, the next 1.2 seconds are an eternity. They do not hear the shell approaching. The Abschuss-Knall, the supersonic crack of the PZ-GR-39 shell arrives at the exact same instant as the shell itself. It does not hit the glacis. It does not hit the mantlet. It strikes the T-3000, 485's new, widened turret ring, the 4-inch thick steel collar that the entire 9-ton turret rides upon. The sound is not a clang or a bang. It is a crack, a sound like the spine of the world breaking. A 10-kilogram steel and explosive projectile, traveling at 840 meters per second, has just tried to occupy the same physical space as the T-34's armor. Physics wins. Inside the turret, the world becomes light and noise. The armor, on the inside of the tank, explodes. It does not penetrate note fully. Instead, the kinetic energy spalls. A superheated, white-hot cone of steel fragments and molten rivets erupts inside the fighting compartment. Dmitri Volkov, his face still pressed to the sight, is slammed backward. The traverse wheel he was holding snaps his wrist. He doesn't feel it. He screams as 1,000 white-hot needles spray across his right side. "Ah! I'm hit!" Vasily, the loader, shrieks. He slumps from his seat, a dark, blossom-shaped stain appearing on the back of his padded Tanko-Schlem helmet. Gas. Pavel roars, smelling the acrid smoke of the breached shell casing, not the sweet, sickly smell of burning diesel. Vasily. Status. The turret is dark. The air is a thick, choking fog of burnt cordite, ozone, and vaporized paint. The only light is a single, terrifying orange tongue of flame licking up from the shell rack. Turret is jammed. Dmitri screams, pulling his broken hand back, his glove slick with his own blood. He tries the electric traverse. Nothing. He tries the manual hand crank. It is solid. "Sergeant, we can't move the gun. The ring is shattered." The Tiger is still out there, reloading. "Mikhail, get us out. Back into the trees." Pavel grabs the fire extinguisher and aims it at the flames. The engine is dead. Mikhail's voice comes from the hull, high-pitched with panic. The impact stalled. "I can't restart." They are a 32-ton steel coffin, and the executioner is preparing his second swing. "Bail out!" Pavel screams, his voice cracking. "Bail out! Bail out!" Pavel slams his foot onto the back of the dead loader. Vasily, kicking his body out of the way. He grabs the hatch release and shoves the heavy steel circle open. Cold, clean air rushes in. Dmitri doesn't need to be told twice. He shoves past his sergeant, his good hand grabbing the rim of the hatch. He hauls his body out, ignoring the fire from his broken arm, and tumbles onto the engine deck. Pavel is right behind him. Below, the driver's hatch clangs open. Mikhail scrambles out, crab-walking backward on his hands and feet, his eyes wide with terror. The three men, the only survivors, drop from the tank and sprint, hunched over, toward the frozen ditch they passed an hour ago. They don't look back. They don't have to. 30 seconds later, a second 88mm shell, this time a high explosive round, hits the crippled T-3485. The beast killer vanishes in a catastrophic, ammunition-fueled explosion that blows the turret clean off its broken ring. Dmitri, Pavel, and Mikhail lie face down in the snow, the shockwave rolling over them. Lying there, his ears ringing, Pavel pants, You see, Lieutenant? That is a Tiger." Dmitri's shock, his disbelief that his 85mm miracle gun had failed was a terrible, bitter education. But it was an education that had been bought in blood 6 months earlier, on a scale so vast it defied imagination. Dmitri's T-3485 was the answer to a question that had been screamed by thousands of burning tank crews in the high summer of 1943. To understand why a single ricochet in 1944 could mean so much, we must go back. Back to the rolling fields of wheat and sunflower south of Kursk. Back to a time before the beast killer even existed. Back to when the Red Army's workhorse, the T-3476, met the monster for the first time, and the crews learned the true, impossible logic of hell. July 12, 1943. 8:30 a.m., south of Prokhorovka. The air isn't air, it is a hot, black blanket of dust, diesel fumes, and the sweet, sickening smell of burning wheat. Inside T-34. For the motherland, Sergeant Ilya Morozov is drowning in his own sweat. The 45°C heat of the Russian summer is amplified by the running V2 engine and the blazing inferno of the battlefield. This is the 5th day of the German offensive, Operation Citadel, and the 5th Guards Tank Army has been thrown into the meat grinder to stop it. Ilya is a gunner, and he is a good one. He and his crew, commanded by Lieutenant Sidorov, are veterans. They'd pushed the Germans back from Stalingrad. They know their tank. The T-3476 is, in their minds, the finest tank in the world. Its 76.2mm F-34 gun, the Stalin's sword, has dispatched hundreds of Panzer IIIs and IVs. Its sloped armor, they were told, was invincible. They are advancing as part of a tank rider assault. Dozens of T-34 engines screaming at full throttle, charge across a vast, rolling field of sunflowers. Infantry huddle on their engine decks. "Enemy tanks! 11 o'clock!" Sidorov's voice is strained, high-pitched over the intercom. "Panzer IVs, long barrel, range 900. Ilya snaps the turret left, his eye glued to the sight. He sees them. 4, 5, no, a full company of them, dug in on the next ridge. "On target, Lieutenant." "Fire, Ilya. Fire at will." This is their work. This is what they do. Ilya selects the lead tank. He waits for his driver, Vaska, to hit a smooth patch of ground, leads the target, and fires. The 76mm round flies true. Boom! The T-34 rocks. The shell hits the Panzer IV's turret. A flash, and the tank's hatch blows open as flames jet from the ring. Hit! Target! Destroyed! "Next target!" Sidorov yells. "We must close the range. Vaska, forward! Faster!" They are charging, firing on the move, a wave of green steel against a line of grey. But as they crest the ridge, Sidorov suddenly screams, "Stop! Vaska, stop! What is that?" The T-34 lurches to a halt. Ilya swings the turret. In a shallow defile, 800 meters away, sits something that does not belong. It is not a Panzer IV. It is not a Stooge. It is a box. A massive, slab-sided, cream-colored rectangle of steel. It is so large, it looks like a captured barn. And it is stationary, systematically vaporizing T-34 seconds one by one, its muzzle flashing with an unnatural, violent crack boom that Ilya can feel in his teeth. It's a heavy, Lieutenant. Ilya breathes. It must be one of the new ones. It's not moving, Sidorov screams, his voice cracking with a mix of terror and opportunity. It's a pillbox, a fixed gun. Ilya, you have the shot. Aim for the front plate. It's flat. It's an easy target. Ilya cannot believe their luck. The Germans have built a fortress, yes, but they have made it out of flat, unsloped plates, a child's drawing of a tank. This is a mistake. A fatal one. Loading APBC. The loader, Fedor, grunts, ramming the shell home. Loaded. Firing! Ilya lines up the crosshairs on the dead center of the monster's vertical face. At 800 meters, he cannot miss. He fires. The tracer screams across the field. It is a perfect shot. It hits, a bright, angry spark of impact. And then, Ilya's world stops. The shell, his reliable, armor-piercing 76.2 millimeters round, does not penetrate. It does not dig in. It hits the 100 millimeters plate and shatters. It disintegrates into a puff of black smoke and useless metal fragments. What? Ilya whispers. He has just seen the impossible. It bounced. Sidorov yells, his voice raw with disbelief. Fedor, reload, fire again. You must have hit a bad plate. Loaded. Ilya fires again. This time he aims lower, at the driver's port. Boom. The shell hits. Ricochet. It careens off into the sky. Again. Loaded. Boom. He aims for the turret. Bounce. It is, Ilya realizes with a cold, sinking dread, like throwing snowballs at a battleship. His gun, the gun that won Stalingrad, is a pea-shooter. And now, the box is no longer a pillbox. With a low groan of stressed metal, the monster's enormous turret begins to turn. It moves with a slow, hydraulic, inevitable leisure. The other T-34 seconds in Ilya's platoon are also firing, their shells sparking uselessly all over its hide. The monster doesn't care. It is turning for them. Vaska, reverse, get us out, get us. Ilya never hears the end of Sidorov's sentence. He only sees the muzzle of the 88mm gun flash, a single, blinding white star. There is no sound, no impact. There is only pressure, heat, and then nothing at all. For the Red Army, the Battle of Kursk was a victory. But it was a victory that came with a terrifying revelation. An entire generation of T-34 seconds, the pride of the Soviet Union, had just been rendered obsolete. The Tiger-phobia that gripped the crews was not cowardice. It was a simple, logical summary of the facts. Their guns did not work, and their armor was paper. The order from Stalin was simple, brutal, and immediate. Find a solution. Give me a gun that can kill this beast. I do not care what it costs. I do not care what you have to adapt. Do it. Now. The beast killer was not just a request. It was a national emergency. Late July 1943, GAB-2 headquarters, Moscow. The reports from the Kursk front are no longer just reports. They are eulogies. They are indictments. Piles of after-action forms, written in greasy pencil by exhausted, surviving commanders, all say the same thing. Our 76mm does not penetrate the new German heavy tank. Crews report shells splashing on the frontal plate. The enemy engages us from 1,500 meters outside our effective range. We are suffering 5-1 losses. No, 0-1. Inside the offices of the Main Armor Directorate, the mood is one of controlled, Arctic panic. The T-34, the savior of Moscow, the symbol of Soviet industrial might, is a weapon of the second rate. Stalin's order, find a solution, now, has landed on the desks of the designers at Uralmash and Factory No. 112. The problem is not a mystery. Everyone knows the answer. The answer is the 85mm 52K anti-aircraft gun. It is the only weapon in the Soviet arsenal, aside from the massive 122mm core guns, that can reliably kill a Tiger at combat ranges. On the Kursk salient, desperate anti-tank crews had been manhandling these huge Zenitka guns, lowering their long barrels parallel to the earth and direct firing at Tigers. And it worked. The 9.2 kilogram BR-365 shell, leaving the muzzle at 800 meters per second, could punch through 100 millimeters of steel at 1,000 meters. The solution was simple. Put that gun in a T-34. But this simple solution was a technical nightmare. At the Zavod, no. 183 Design Bureau, evacuated to Nizhny Tagil, Chief Designer A. Morozov, sketches the problem. The T-3476's turret is a cramped, two-man affair. The commander, who also acted as the gunner, was hideously overworked. Most critically, the turret sat on a 1,420mm turret ring. When engineers tried to create a mock-up, the problem became comical, then terrifying. The 85mm breech was enormous. The shells were nearly a meter long. To fit it, the gunner would have to have his legs amputated, and the loader would have to sit on the tank's floor. The recoil alone would smash the commander against the turret wall. It did not fit. This was the crisis. The Red Army's main battle tank could not be upgunned. The first, frantic attempts were clumsy. They tried to create a new 85mm gun, the S-53, designed by Vasily Grabin. It was more compact, but it still wouldn't fit. Meanwhile, the T-43, the next generation, T-34, was in testing. It had better armor, and crucially, a brand new, spacious, three-man turret with a 1,600mm ring. It was perfect. But the T-43 was a new tank. To switch production from the T-34 to the T-43 would mean shutting down the tank factories Tankergrad for months, for retooling. Shutting down the factories in the middle of the largest war in human history was not an option. The Red Army would rather have 1,000 inferior tanks now than 100 perfect tanks in 6 months. The order came down from the State Defense Committee, GKO. The T-43 is cancelled. Do not stop T-34 production for a single day. It seemed like a death sentence. They were being ordered to keep building an obsolete tank. Then, one of the designer's history is unclear who had the revolutionary, simple idea. The T-43 tank is cancelled. But what about the T-43's turret? It was a flash of industrial genius. Why not take the chassis of the proven, mass-produced T-3476, which was rolling off the lines by the tens of thousands, and mate it with the new, larger turret from the cancelled T-43? The idea caught fire. At Factory No. 112, engineers worked 48-hour shifts. They took the 1,600mm T-43 turret, slightly modified it, and found it could, with effort, be mounted on the existing T-34 hull. The new space was cavernous. A three-man crew could finally fit. A commander, a gunner, and a loader. The commander could finally command, the gunner could gun, and the loader could load. And into this new massive turret, they could finally mount the Beast Killer. Two guns were competing, Grabin's S-53 and Fyodor Petrov's D-5 tons. The D-5 tons, a direct adaptation of the 85mm anti-aircraft gun, was ready first. In December 1943, the first prototypes rolled onto the firing range. They were ugly. They were hybrids, compromises, a mishmash of old and new. The chassis armor was still the same, still vulnerable, but when the gunner settled into his new, dedicated seat, he was aiming a cannon that could finally fight back. The T-3485 was born. Not from a clean design, but from a desperate, high-speed battlefield surgery. And by January 1944, the first production models were being loaded onto trains, still smelling of fresh paint, and rushed to the front. Rushed to men like Junior Lieutenant Dmitri Volkov, who were told, with absolute certainty, that they were now driving the solution. They were the cure for Tiger-phobia. They were the Zveroboy. February 5th, 1944. A frozen ditch near Shandarivka. The column of black smoke that was once Stalin's fist is a funeral pyre, an oily flag visible for miles. Dmitri Volkov lies in the snow, his broken arm a dull, throbbing fire, but it's nothing compared to the cold that has seized his soul. His ears ring with the explosion and the ghost of Pavel's command. Bail out. He and his two surviving crewmen, Pavel and Mikhail, are 100 meters away, pressed flat against the frozen earth. The Tiger, its victory absolute, hasn't even moved. It is waiting, scanning, a king surveying its domain. Dmitri coughs, the taste of soot and diesel in his mouth. It bounced. He gasps, the words tasting like ash. Pavel, it bounced. At 1,000 meters. They told us. Pavel, the veteran sergeant, spits a pink-tinged gob of snow. He is staring at the burning wreck, his face a mask of grim, exhausted understanding. They told us it was a beast killer, Dmitri insists, his voice rising with the hysteria of a man who has just seen his god fail. The 85mm. It was the answer. It is an answer, Lieutenant, Pavel says, his voice flat, never taking his eyes off the Tiger. It's just not the answer you wanted. He finally turns, his ice-blue, haunted eyes locking on Dmitri's. What did you hit? The front plate, Dmitri says. Dead center, like we practiced. And what is the front plate? Pavel asks, as if schooling a child. 100mm, face hardened, at 1,000 meters. But the Zveroboy, the BR-365 shell, is a 9-kilogram piece of steel? Pavel interrupts, his voice hard. And physics, Lieutenant, is a cruel suka. Our new gun is good. It is a gift from God, but it is not a magic wand. Pavel's words, and the smoking ruin 100 meters away, are the brutal, physical manifestation of the Red Army's new, terrible equation. The crews had been told the T-3485 was the answer to the Tiger. And it was. But it was a solution with horrifying asterisks. The D5 tons gun, firing its BR-365 armor-piercing round, could indeed penetrate the Tiger's 100mm frontal armor. But the performance tables, the ones the crews were never shown, told the full story. At 500 meters, it was a near-certain penetration. At 800 meters, it was a gamble. At 1,000 meters the range at which Dmitri had fired the shell had lost just enough of its kinetic energy that it was now a 5,050 proposition. Strike the hardened steel plate at a slight angle, hit a weld, or just a patch of superior quality Krupp steel, and the shell would fail. It would shatter, or, as Dmitri saw, it would ricochet, leaving the beast unharmed. But the Tiger's gun, the 8.8 centimeters Quebuquet 36, had no such limitations. You see, Lieutenant, Pavel continues, pulling a dirty bandage from his tunic and beginning to wrap Dmitri's arm. You hit him, and he shrugged. He hit us, and, poof, he gestures at the fire. His 88 can kill us from 2,000 meters. It can punch through our turret from 1,500. It can go through our front glacis from 1,000. Dmitri stares at him. Then it's useless. The new tank is a lie. We're still lambs for the slaughter. No, Pavel says, tying the bandage with a vicious tug that makes Dmitri hiss. You are thinking like a duelist. You are thinking like a German. You think you sit on a hill and snipe. That is not our way. That is not the T-34's way. Pavel grabs Dmitri by the front of his smock. The old 76mm? It couldn't kill a Tiger from the side, not unless you were 300 meters away. This 85mm? It can kill a Tiger from the side at 1,500 meters. It can kill it from the front, if you are brave, or stupid, enough to get to 500 meters. The shock wasn't that the shell bounced. The shock was the realization. The beast killer had not made the T-3485 a superior tank. It had not made them invulnerable snipers. It had simply, and at terrible cost, given them a chance to fight. It had turned them from helpless prey into a dangerous brawler. The T-3485 was not a sniper's rifle. It was a 32-ton sawed-off shotgun. The new rule of war was not stay back and duel. The new rule was get close, get fast, swarm. February 8th, 1944. 3 days later, a muddy ravine west of Shandarivka. They are given a new tank. It is not a ceremony. It is not a reward. It is a rearming. The replacement tank, number 302, is fresh from Tankergrad. The paint so new it hasn't had time to be properly weathered, save for the crude white cross painted on the turret for aerial identification. The crew, the survivors of Stalin's fist, simply paint out the factory number and write "Relentless, Besposhadny" on the turret. It is not a boast. It is a promise. Dmitri Volkov's arm is in a crude sling, but he is in the gunner's seat. A good gunner, even with one functioning arm to crank the elevation, is too valuable to send to a field hospital. Pavel is in the commander's cupola. Mikhail is at the driver's controls. A new loader, a pale, 9-year-old Siberian named Sergei, has replaced Vasily. He hasn't spoken a word. The ground has changed. The iron-hard frost of February has given way to a false thaw. The Rasputin saith, roadlessness has begun. The world is a sea of brown, clinging, axle-deep mud. For the Germans, this mud is a cage. For the T-34, with its wide Christ-pattern tracks, it is a hunting ground. We are not duelists, we are wolves. Pavel's voice over the intercom is different now. The grizzled veteran is gone, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged instructor. Dmitri, you are not a sniper. You are the fangs. Mikhail, you are not a driver. You are the legs. Your job is to get the fangs to the soft part. They are part of a rotor, a company of 3 T-3000, 485 seconds, sent on a high-speed raid to probe a German breakout attempt from the Korsun pocket. They are advancing in a loose wedge, engines roaring, churning massive rooster tails of mud behind them. Contact! The call comes from For Victory, the lead tank. 9 o'clock, in the gully. Tiger. It's stuck. Dmitri's heart hammers. He swings the turret. Pavel is already on his periscope. I see him. Pavel barks. He's bellied out. The mud has him, but his gun is active. There it is. The same monster from 3 days ago. Or its twin. It's sunk to its hull in the viscous mud, its tracks spinning uselessly, throwing brown fountains into the air. It has become the very thing Ilya Morozov mistakenly saw at Kursk. A fixed pillbox, but a pillbox with an 88mm cannon. He sees us, Pavel says, his voice devoid of emotion. He's traversing. What are the orders, Sergeant? Dmitri asks, his hand tight on the traverse. Pavel keys his radio. For Victory and Guardsmen, this is Relentless. I am engaging the flank. Victory, you are the bait. Get his attention. Move right, fire on his front. Guardsman, circle wide left. We will hit him from 3 sides. Understood, the radio crackles. Mikhail, Pavel shouts into the intercom. Full throttle. Get us in that ditch. We go around him. Relentless lurches, the V2 engine screaming as Mikhail floors it, sliding the 32-ton tank into a shallow, water-filled depression that gives them cover. Dmitri, load armor-piercing. Loaded. Sergei's voice is a high-pitched squeak. To their right, they hear the boom of For Victory's 85mm gun. He's firing. Pavel narrates, his eyes on the periscope. The shot! It bounced. Good. The Tiger is turning. He's turning to face Victory. A half-second later, the air tears apart. The crack boom of the Tiger's 88mm. Pavel flinches, his head still at the sight. Bog. For Victory is hit. It's gone. They're burning. Dmitri feels his stomach clench. A crew of 4 men, vaporized. For a distraction. Do not stop. Pavel roars, as if sensing Mikhail's hesitation. Their sacrifice bought us this. Go, go, go. Mikhail guns the engine. Relentless scrambles out of the ditch, the tank fishtailing wildly in the muck. They are now on the Tiger's 9 o'clock. On its side. The Tiger's turret is still pointed at the smoking ruin of For Victory. Its crew is probably reloading, triumphant. Range, Pavel demands. 800 meters. Dmitri yells, his good hand spinning the elevation, his eye on the sight. He sees it. Not the 100 millimeters of impregnable arrogance. He sees 80 millimeters of flat, unsuspecting side-hull armor. Fire! Dmitri stomps the pedal. The 85 millimeters cannon erupts. The tracer is a red line. There is no bounce. There is no splash. The BR-365 shell hits the Tiger's side, just above the road wheels, and vanishes. A perfect, black, 85 millimeters circle appears. For a second, nothing happens. Then, a violent orange-white flash inside the Tiger's hull is visible through the entry hole. Hit! Sergei screams, already fumbling with the next round. Penetration. He's on fire! He's on fire inside! Dmitri shouts, seeing a thick, black plume of smoke suddenly jet from the Tiger's cupola. Again! Pavel bellows. Do not let them breathe. Do not let them escape. Again. Loaded. Dmitri fires. The second shot punches through the same plate, 3 feet from the first. This time, the effect is instantaneous. The 57-ton monster convulses. A catastrophic secondary explosion rips the turret from its ring and flings it 10 feet into the air. It lands upside down in the mud. Relentless shudders to a halt, its engine idling. The only sounds are the hiss of the burning wreck and the sudden, violent sobbing of Sergei, the loader, who is now crying with a mix of terror and relief. Dmitri Volkov leans back from his sight, his body shaking. He looks at the brass casing, still smoking in the deflector cage. Pavel puts a hand on his shoulder. That, Lieutenant, he says, his voice a low rumble, is how you kill a monster.